just whilst we're waiting, I do want to reiterate something that Nick just said. All your official communications will come through your ARC email addresses. So once you get access to them, log in and check that there are no existing forwarding rules to the previous councillor, or sorry, previous office bearer, depending on which email address you're using. Obviously, you don't want emails to continue to be forwarded to outgoing council members. Make sure you set up forwarding rules to your personal addresses if you don't plan on logging in consistently to the ARC account, but all invitations for meetings, all official communications, anything we need to let you know or keep you aware of or chase with you will all go to your ARC account. So please make sure that you log in and get that all set up and check it regularly, or at least have the forwarding rule.
I was just going to jump online.
Okay, no worries. I will hand over to you and Aya once she's joined.
Sweet. Also, I found out that you can redirect your ARC email to you can put them all in one email. Do that. It's really helpful, and like people will understand, because I think my replies tend to come from my student email address, not the actual ARC one, but like people are smart enough that they see your name and they put two and two together.
Yeah.
You. Oh, no. I'm really sorry. I had lots of fun transitions to keep myself entertained, so it's going to be really annoying for you. Hey, Aya.
Hello. Sorry, just checking that I can hear you and you can hear me.
Yeah, we're sweet.
Beautiful. Hello.
Cool. So we should just start and like jump in when you want.
Yeah, cool. I'm ready now.
Welcome to our guide to community engagement. Aya was this year's, or still is, women's officer. I was one of the queer officers for this year. They're kind of different as collectives than just the ones that are purely activism based, because you're also catering to a really specific community and you're trying to provide them the best services and the best support system that you can. So a lot of the work we did was about establishing community and helping them in any way we can. If you want to go to the next slide. So for myself, the main thing I had to consider was who my target audience is. If you want to just like keep pressing button things, so just going to keep coming up. So the uni has over 60,000 students. You are not going to be able to cater to all of them. You're a singular person. Maybe there's two of you. That could be really helpful and lucky. Maybe you're like Aya and you set up a subcom, which is incredibly helpful. But you need to consider who your target audience is, because you're not going to reach everyone, and just narrowing things down the best as you can. So 46% of the population at uni are female identifying, but that doesn't mean I still have the ability to cater to 30,000 people. Just be really specific. If you want to keep going. Yeah, so, and then it's also important to consider what you're actually trying to provide. I kind of had a general rule of thumb going this year that over COVID, the queer community on campus got really small. People didn't necessarily know each other. And the main goal for the year was to build community back up, because until you have people in a group who are comfortable around each other and feel supported by each other, you're not going to be able to target the rest of the things, right? People aren't going, well, some people might, but the large majority of people aren't going to be getting engaged in activism and getting engaged in queer education or whatever your collective may be, unless they feel like they're part of a community, unless they feel safe and supported. And so it's really important to consider what you're trying to provide. What I did is focus on that. And for the other three categories we had, I consider to be activism, support, and education. For every event or campaign I ran that focused around one of them, we then matched it. So like support was also like fun things to be doing, right? For every contingent we sent to a protest, we would also have a picnic or a board games night or something like that. So you're really catering to the people you want. Aya, do you have anything to add on that front?
Yeah, I was going to say similar, in that I approached it similarly to Leora did this year, wherein I chose which of these four, I suppose, goals of an office or an office bearer I wanted to focus on the most. And similarly to the queer collective and the queer community shrinking a little bit, I noticed that over COVID as well, feminist activism and really just a support group for women wasn't as prominent. So I had this same target of building up a community this year, which meant that most of my campaigns, my events, pretty much most of what I did with budget and within my collective was trying to cater to that idea of rebuilding the community. So my advice to you all, if you're an office bearer or even a councillor, would simply be just to have a look at which of the 4 you want to specialize in, or 2 of the 4, or all of the 4 if you have the guts. But I think it's definitely important to, at the beginning of your term, make a very conscious choice as to how you want to be running your group moving forward. Because as Leora said, it was super helpful to know that community is my main focus, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to ignore the other 3. So with every community event I'd do an education event. And then if I did an education event last term, I'd spend the next term focusing on activism events and that kind of thing. So obviously including a balance of all, but knowing you can't do everything all at once, and picking one that you feel is the most necessary for your collective and sticking with that, just having that vision in mind as you go over your year in office.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is to it's really important to get involved with students. That's what our role is, and figure out what they want. So I kind of went in and I was like, I have all of these ideas and they're all surrounding education, but that's not necessarily what my collective wanted. And people aren't going to stay involved and people aren't going to care unless you're actually giving them what they want. So that's something good to consider. Do you want to go to the next slide? Just press buttons. Visibility is kind of our most important thing. A lot of people aren't exactly sure that the SRC exists. Do you want to yeah, just kidding. So there's lots of ways we can do that. I put up all the collective and SRC Instagrams that I remembered about. Be active in social media. I know sometimes it's really exhausting, but we all exist on our phones most of the time, especially as a lot of things are online. And the easiest way to get people involved is cute little infographics, cute little photos, and people are enticed to come join, because it's really, really difficult as part of the SRC or as a collective, different to societies, to be visible and to get people involved. It's super obvious if you're doing Mech Eng to go join MechSoc. It's not super obvious if you're a woman at UNSW to go join WOCO. So we have to put in so much extra effort to be visible. So we have some photos of this year's SRC stalling, and that's something really important that we do during a week. And I think it's really easy to sit there and be like, okay, I've been rostered on for 3 hours and I'm just going to sit here. Don't do that. Actively get people involved. You all clearly are social people enough that you ran and got a position on the SRC. You can keep using those skills and just have conversations with people. Those conversations don't always need to be about the campaign you're running at that time or about that political thing you're running at the time. Talk about what the SRC is, what we can do, and all the different aspects. Right? It's really easy for me to sit there and be like, yep, I run the queer collective. Not everyone's going to give a shit about that. Have people come in and say, hey, are you female identifying? Do you want to join WOCO? Do you really care about educational activism? And just get people involved where you can and help each other out. Aya, anything else?
I was going to echo the same sentiment. Visibility is really, really important. When I took over as women's officer, I found that a lot of people didn't really know that there was a women's officer or that the women's collective existed. So I want to stress the importance of visibility on campus, but also on socials, as Leora expressed. So the way that I managed to get my subcom to join WOCO and to create a subcom was simply through advertising via social media. So utilizing forums that we have, such as the UNSW discussion group on Facebook, utilizing the UNSW SRC Instagram account and things like that when you want people to get involved, because as Leora said, we're kind of all on our phones these days all the time. So as much as physical visibility is important, it's also super important to have a social media presence. And the other thing I was going to add to that is it's super hard as an office bearer to run your own collective and also run the socials of your collective. So if you have the capacity to, my advice would be to delegate social media as a task to somebody else in the collective who's passionate about increasing visibility. So we had 2 social media coordinators this year in the women's collective, one for our Facebook account and one for our Instagram account. And we found that made it so much easier to increase communications and get visibility out there. So I'd advise that you look into that option.
Yeah, 100%. To what I said, I was on the struggle bus all year because social media isn't my forte and I didn't really have anyone to help me out. So the more you can get people involved, the better. Go to the next one. Cool. Also working with UNSW. I know Nick went on his rant, but sometimes they're really helpful, especially when you're doing things that you just need support. So we have ARC, they came in, it's a cute little photo I stole off their thing. I don't actually know what Angie's role is, but if
EDI
someone,
Angela?
projects coordinator.
EDI, amazing, that makes sense why she was so helpful to me. Get involved, they're here to help you. They can give you extra money outside of your budget. That's something I found that's super helpful. Because it's really difficult. You're going to be one person running a collective. You're going to probably have some help, but a lot often falls on you. And they're here to help you. I worked a lot with UNSW EDI, and as Joel said before, they're super keen to get involved. So if you're running a collective that has a focus on equity, diversity, inclusion, like let them help you and run events with them if that's something that you care about. And I know a lot of the time in SRC, there's this trend to go against uni management. But if my goal this year was to engage community and have education for the queer community, working with people who had the money and the tools and the experts was really important to me. There's also faculty EDIs, if that's something you care about. So they kind of sit under UNSW EDI. UNSW Health was incredibly important, again, in my role working with the queer community, to cater to them, to even as well campaign things to them. Like it's incredibly well known that UNSW psychological services and counselling services are less than perfect. And so campaigning to them and just like working with the uni, because that is your job. That's what you were elected for as a student representative within the uni. Get involved with Pato Campus. We tend to forget about them because they're not like here, but there are thousands of students there that we can cater to as well. And I did a lot of working with societies, which I found incredibly helpful because they come with a group of students already involved. So I don't then have to do the outreach. So for me, I mean, I was also president of QSIS, so that was like super helpful. I had my little monopoly. But work with the people that are relevant, right? If you're women's officer, there's women in science and women in tech, like they're going to bring you people that you can then spread your message to more people and have more people involved in your campaigns and events and activist things that you're doing because you need a community. Yeah, sorry, I talk a lot.
Don't talk a lot.
Yeah.
Look, all I was going to say was, again, echoing the same sentiment. I wanted to say that for me, this was my first time as an OB and first time being involved in SRC at all. So when I first started off, I didn't really know I had these resources available to me. And increasingly over my term, I got to use them more and more. And you could tell the quality of the office itself of my collective just improved because it was no longer me being in the dark, but having a team supporting me. Which means that my advice to you all coming into SRC is to look into the resources you have early on. So do a bit of looking around, especially when you're in a bit of a lull period and you don't have much to do. Go around on the ARC intranet, see all the things that you can do. We have a lot of hire for options. So with ARC, you can hire a lot of equipment, a lot more than you probably think you can. So have a look into all those things. It's really helpful knowing what resources you have available because that can help you then with creating ideas. You might get an idea because you find out that you have a smoke machine available that you didn't know about, and that can help you into an event. So my point is knowing your resources early on is super important to ensure that the remainder of your term is really strong and you've got a lot of options to do. I would also make a list if you have the time available to you of useful contacts. And I know there's one on the ARC intranet, but it could be helpful to have a little bit of a separate one of also society presidents, people that you think could be relevant to contact if certain things arise. So a little list of contacts that you can draw on.
Yeah. And then also important to consider people who will help you with stuff that isn't necessarily in their job description. So Mitch, for me, was super instrumental in just giving general advice. They helped us sort of establish like peer mentoring and lots of different things that even though their job is marketing, like people have expertise. A lot of people who work at ARC were also in the SRC. So they know what's going on and they can help you out. Yeah. We can just talk about events and campaigns that we ran this year and things we found successful and things we didn't, if you want to go first.
Oh, me? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, with regards to some of the events that the Women's Collective ran, as I said, community was a huge focus. So we mainly ran things that would get UNSW students interacting with each other. We found that our most successful events were always ones that involved food in some way, free food. Our most successful ever was the one that involved a free bar tab. So that was very clear. It's the easiest way to engage students by offering free food and or drink. We found that a lot of the activism campaigns were less popular amongst a wide student body, but would target a very passionate student body, which almost has the same effect. So while there were less students attending those events, the outcome was significant because of how passionate those students were. And just generally, in terms of my advice for planning events and campaigns, as office bearers, we work with a little budget. So anytime you get any grant or any funding outside of your SRC budget, utilize it as much as you can and exploit it to its last cent, because it really helps having a large budget to get more and more things, more food, more decorations, hiring certain venues, etc.
Yeah, so I also found a similar thing that we would send contingents to protests, and that would be a smaller group of really passionate people. But the more niche an activity was, the better turnout, because people are more likely to feel engaged in that community. So the photo that you can see on the top right is Queer Collective, Cross International Collective Karaoke Night, which is just like a really weird and random thing, but it was just queer international students. And so like the smaller you get that group, the more people are inclined to come, because they're like, oh yeah, I'll make friends. Like this is not a really broad group of people. And then once you bring them in through something like that is when they then would end up going to protests. We ran sex ed, which is like not a really super fun thing that most people want to sign up to, but because we'd put in the work to already have social things that people could come along and feel comfortable with, then going to something a bit more uncomfortable like sex ed, it worked out better. And then they also want to get involved. It's just catering things to the people that you know need it, and then will be an active part of the collective. What else did we do?
I was also going to say on that note with events, sorry, Leora, just as you said, targeting kind of a specific or niche audience is the best way to get people involved. And by extension of that, advertising that niche slash, smaller group event on the relevant society pages or club pages is super important, because as you said, the Queer International event, advertising that event on queer forums and international student forums is a really good way to target both of those groups. So for example, the Women's Collective did a collaboration with the Film Society, and that meant that advertising the fact that we were putting together a feminist movie, it was helpful to advertise it to both feminists and film lovers, because then you got both people of those groups coming together, making a larger pool of attendees. So keep in mind when you are doing an event, who could possibly be interested in this kind of event, not necessarily just your target audience that you're supporting, such as women, but also another target audience that could be interested in that same thing, such as karaoke lovers for Leora's event.
Yeah, and another thing just to consider in terms of campaigns is you'll have ideas at the beginning of the year, but the world is evolving and changing around you, and so those things will get interrupted. So unfortunately for the queer community this year, Mardi Gras got overshadowed by the religious discrimination bill. So I had to put the fun Mardi Gras plans on hold, and we ran a panel and a talk on the religious discrimination bill and how you could get involved and how you could fight it. And so it's sort of really important to consider like what you care about the most and what people are wanting to learn about and get involved in, and that will occasionally mean things that you thought you were going to do are going to go on hold, or that you're going to have to drop them and not do them because something more important will come up. And that's like completely fine. Like you can go in with all these promises that you ran on, you're not going to accomplish them all. Like really sorry, it's not going to happen. But you can just do your best at the things that are most important. That's all. Any questions? Joelle?
Hello, sorry, not a question. I just want to add a couple of things to use Aya's wording. I'm going to echo all the sentiments of what you said, but I just wanted to say, I know it sounded trivial, but please don't underestimate the power of free food. It really is like a godsend for students, and we do it for ARC events as well. Like it's the way to get people engaged. They come, they stay. So I would recommend that, and also just keeping in mind that the Roundhouse can provide the barbecue sort of material, all the food, the barbecues themselves, all the equipment, so you can run a barbecue for relatively cheap at your events, and you can do that as regularly as you like. Please, as Leora mentioned, no, sorry, not Leora, as Aya mentioned, there are resources that you probably didn't know you had access to, and you'll kind of keep discovering throughout your term, but in order to negate that and not find something out halfway through, please just ask. If you're trying to get something to happen or you're trying to work something out, reach out to Lucy or I, and we'll be able to tell you if there is that thing available or how you can make that thing possible. We're here for you to ask those questions too. We don't want it to be that in your last month of your term you realise that you could organise a barbecue through us. So please reach out. And then lastly, if you want to collaborate with ARC on anything, especially if there's things that you see that we're doing anyway, like for Stress Less Week, or we're participating in Diversity Fest, or any of the other Respect Week, or any other of the initiatives that you know that ARC are doing, please let us know if you want to collaborate or if you have an idea, because our reach as the student org and all of our members is going to be larger than what you have as your individual collective. So if you want to organise something specific with us, get in touch with, myself, but I'm likely going to handball you to the wonderful Mitch, who will help you out. Or if you want to collaborate with a volunteering program and make something happen, like, just ask and we will point you in the right direction, and we will do our best to help, because many hands make light work. So if we can leverage what already exists, then it'll make everyone's lives heaps easier.
Yeah, and just like jumping on what Joel said, really use those weeks. They're super helpful, because if you want to do stalling on a random Tuesday, there aren't going to be as many people walking by incidentally. If you want to do stalling during Respect Week and your ethnocultural officer, and it's a thing that makes sense, people are going to be there and your target audience are going to be there. Just like make your life easier and do it then when there's already people, they're already there trying to find free things. You give them a free thing. It's a chance to have a discussion. Like, just.
Or you put your stall next to the existing free thing.
Yeah.
Like, if we're already giving out donuts, just try and put your ask for a stall near the donuts. But
yeah, that's kind of all I have to offer. And then I guess, like, be really realistic. Things are difficult. Yeah.
Can I just add something? So from my experience being at council the last couple of months, a resource that I've found really helpful in trying to find out what issues are happening is reaching out to student representatives that are on like faculty boards, school boards, the academic board and the university council. They're good resources at finding out what the hell's going on, and also helping you get stuff done through the university as well. So yeah, it kind of goes to the point of what you guys raised about having and using your contacts to help you get stuff done.
Yeah.
And also raising things with your SRC president, because they sit on the board. The president of the SRC PGC and the chair of the board regularly sit in meetings with UNSW departments like EDI, like CIO, like PVCE, et cetera, So you can funnel things up through or raise them with the president to sort of collate, and they add things to the agenda and they have those discussions. So that's what their position is sort of there for as well.
Amazing.
Okay. Well, if there's no more questions, we are ahead of time, but the next sessions are just Paige and Nick anyway. So you're more than welcome to just cruise straight into the next session, and you'll probably all get an early mark. Thank you so much for joining, Aya.
Do that. I have class at 2.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Aya.
Thanks, Aya.
Thank you. Bye,
Enjoy your day.
everyone.
So this one will kind of be a very collaborative session. I'm going to go through, because obviously the SRC vision is super duper broad. We have collectives kind of running everywhere. It kind of follows through on a lot of stuff we've done last year that kind of follows over this year. So it's super, super broad. I'm going to go through the basics, and then we're going to kind of hopefully break off into, if we can, online breakout rooms and in-person breakout rooms, if that's possible, to do that. And then work on our plans for next year. So basically the first thing is that we are a team. So we work with one another and support each other to achieve our goals. So as an SRC, we want to make sure that our councillors are working with our office bearers are working with our councillors, our office bearers working with each other, because I really, really enjoy it when office bearers can come together and have collaboration events like Leora was talking about when she did the international students and queer collective crossover event. So that's like a super cool way when you're working together and things kind of cross over. It's a super cool way to support each other, but also on a lesser sense, just letting your collective members know when other collectives are doing stuff and advertising through those word of mouth kind of, and supporting each other that way. But also sometimes the council will run huge whole council initiatives that we can all work together on as well. So there's different types of things that we do, but we do try to be a team at all time to kind of support each other to get stuff done. And we want you guys to achieve your goals. So you all came in promising lots of big things, and we kind of talked about that it might not be possible to get everything done, but we want to be able to provide you guys with the support possible to get as much done as you can, obviously without burning out. And at the end of the day, we want you guys to be okay with the experience at the end of the day. But yeah, come talk to us about your plan. It's required in the charter that you do put a plan together. So we want you guys to come talk to us about it before you submit that, and we can work through the steps to make sure that you are supported with everything you want to achieve. And then we can also connect you, like we were talking about with those, Caleb mentioned the different faculty boards and stuff. So a lot of plans that people come up with tend to be really well supported when you can have the right connections of people to talk to for different campaigns and events. So we want to be able to connect you with that. And then the last thing is that we're really, really student focused. So everything we do, we want to make sure that students are supported. So we need to have solutions to make sure students are supported on each of the issues. So again, we're working together to make that possible. Some of the things like we've worked on this year in different collectives is the course changes, cheaper accommodations and special considerations. So those are just kind of big areas that have been happening, and we've tried to work in those areas, and we'll continue to work in those areas. So basically, if you want to pursue an idea, let any one of us, me or Reed, know, and we want to help you as much as possible get that done in your collective and just in general as an office bearer. And now, if you guys haven't read the charter, hopefully, as we were saying before, you have, you'll notice there's a huge section in there about the plan that you have to put together as both a councillor and an office bearer. Less so for councillors, the plan is less in depth, but kind of what we want to do now